March 10th, 2026, South Australia Police released a quiet statement. No press conference, no cameras, no explanations. Just 9 words. 9 words that changed the entire investigation. Task Force Horizon has returned to Oak Park Station. That's it. But here is what they didn't say. This is now the 3rd time investigators have returned to this property. And every single time they leave without Gus. So the question is no longer where Gus Lamont is. The real question now is something far darker. Who on that property knows exactly what happened to him and has been lying about it since the night of September 27th, 2025? Stay with me, because in this video, I'm going to walk you through the specific 3-hour window that investigators now believe tells the entire story. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why police keep coming back to that property and why someone living on it has stopped talking. Let's go back to the beginning. But not the beginning you've heard before. September 27th, 2025. Oak Park Station, a remote sheep property in South Australia, 43 kilometers south of Yunta. The nearest neighbor is not down the street. The nearest neighbor is across kilometers of open, red, empty land. This is not a place where things go unnoticed. This is a place where a single vehicle on a dirt road kicks up a dust cloud visible for kilometers, where sound travels differently, where strangers stand out, where everyone knows everyone, and where a 4-year-old boy named Gus Lamont simply ceased to exist. At approximately 5 p.m. that afternoon, Gus was last seen outside. Curly blonde hair, a red and blue top, playing on a small mound of dirt near the homestead. His grandmother saw him there. She went inside. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming, just a child playing outside. 30 minutes later, she called him in for dinner. No answer. She called again. Silence. She walked outside, and the mound of dirt was empty, no footprints leading away. No sound, no sign, just the wind across the outback, and the beginning of every parent's worst nightmare. Now here is where I need you to stop and really pay attention, because what I'm about to tell you is not a theory. It is not speculation. It is what South Australia's own Major Crime Division confirmed publicly. Between 5 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. on September 27th, that is 3.5 hours, investigators identified serious inconsistencies in one specific person's timeline. Not confusion, not a mistake in recollection. Statements that do not match the physical evidence. Statements that investigators say are not possible. Detective Superintendent Darren Fielke stood before cameras and said it directly. He said investigators had found multiple discrepancies in information provided by someone on the property, and because of those discrepancies, that person is now an official suspect in the disappearance of Gus Lamont. 3.5 hours, one person, one timeline that doesn't hold. That is what broke this case open. Now I know the question forming in your mind. Who is this person? Police have not officially named them, and responsible journalism does not name an uncharged individual. But here is what authorities have confirmed, and these are not assumptions. These are direct facts from official police statements. Fact 1. The suspect lives at Oak Park Station. Not a visitor. Not someone passing through, someone who calls that property home. Someone who was there the morning Gus disappeared. And someone who was there the morning after. Fact 2. The suspect is not Gus's parents. Police have been completely clear about this. Jessica and Joshua Lamont are not suspects. They cooperated from the very first moment. They answered every question. They joined every search. They gave investigators everything they asked for. They are not responsible for what happened to their son. Fact 3. The suspect was someone Gus knew, not a stranger. Not a face he had never seen before, someone familiar. Someone a 4-year-old child would walk toward without fear. Someone he trusted. And that detail changes everything about how you read this case. In January 2026, police made their first major move. They executed a search warrant at Oak Park Station, targeting this specific individual. They left with three things: a vehicle, a motorcycle, and multiple electronic devices. All of it sent directly to forensic laboratories. Now here is why those three items matter so much. Modern vehicles contain telematics systems. These systems are not optional. They cannot be turned off. They record everything: location data, GPS coordinates, engine activity, speed, every start and stop. If that vehicle moved at any point between 5 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. on September 27th, investigators already know exactly where it went, exactly which roads, exactly how far, exactly how long it stopped. And here is the part I need you to hold on to, because we are going to come back to this. Shortly after police began asking very specific questions about that 3.5-hour window, this person made a decision. They stopped answering questions. They hired a lawyer, and all communication with investigators went through legal representation only. Now, hiring a lawyer is a legal right. It is not automatic proof of guilt, but ask yourself something honest. If a child you knew, a child who lived under the same roof, a child who trusted you, if that child vanished from the property where you lived, what would your first instinct be? Would you call a lawyer? Or would you be out there searching through the night, refusing to sleep, refusing to stop, doing absolutely everything until that child was found? That question matters, because investigators are asking it too. Now, I want to give you the full scale of what Australia committed to finding Gus, because most people do not truly understand what happened over the months that followed. Over 160 South Australian police officers assigned exclusively to this case, 230 additional resources including Australian Defence Force personnel, state emergency services teams, and an Indigenous tracker with decades of experience reading outback terrain, 8 separate ground searches, aerial operations covering nearly 95 square kilometres of land surrounding Oak Park Station, 3 dams, completely drained. Think about that for a moment. 3 dams, drained to the bottom, because investigators were prepared to find the worst, and they still found nothing. 6 mine shafts, fully inspected, helicopters, drones, cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating equipment, every resource, every expert, every technique available to modern forensic investigators. And after all of it, there was no trace of Gus. Not a shoe, not a piece of clothing, not a single biological trace outside the homestead. Detective Superintendent Fielker used a specific phrase to describe this result. He called it an evidentiary void, and in forensic investigations, that phrase carries enormous weight, because here is what most people don't know about missing children in the outback. When a small child wanders, they always leave something. Always. Footprints in red dirt, broken twigs at their height, disturbed ground, a dropped item, a hair caught on a branch. Children cannot move fast enough or far enough to vanish completely from a search of this scale. Not in this terrain, not in this environment. The absence of any trace is not a mystery. It is a message. It tells investigators that what happened to Gus was not an accident, was not a child wandering into the bush. It tells them that someone made deliberate choices. Someone who knew that land. Someone who knew how to move without leaving the kind of trail that 160 officers and 8 separate searches would find. And now here is the piece of this story that most coverage has completely missed. The landscape itself is a witness. The Australian outback in that region is brutally open. When a vehicle drives across those red dirt roads, it creates a dust trail visible for kilometers. That is not an exaggeration. It is a documented feature of that terrain. Police interviewed every person in the surrounding area on September 27th. Every neighbor, every driver who passed through, every worker in the region. And the conclusion investigators reached was extraordinary. No one saw any vehicle arriving at or leaving Oak Park Station during that 3.5-hour window. no dust trail, no tire tracks from an outside vehicle, no unfamiliar faces, no sign of anyone coming from beyond that fence line. That is why investigators systematically and completely eliminated the stranger abduction theory. Not because they didn't consider it. They considered everything. But because the physical environment made it impossible. Someone from outside that property would have needed a vehicle, and a vehicle in that environment that afternoon would have been seen. Which means investigators are now operating on one conclusion. Whatever happened to Gus happened inside the boundary of Oak Park Station, in reach of people who knew him, during a window of time when one person's account does not match reality. Which brings us back to today. March 10th, 2026. Task Force Horizon returns to Oak Park Station for the third time, and this time the statement is different. Not one targeted location, multiple locations across the property. Major crime investigations do not return to the same site 3 separate times without a reason. They do not commit resources to a third return visit because they are running out of ideas. They return because the evidence they already have is pointing them somewhere specific. And here is what I believe is driving this third visit: the forensic analysis of those seized devices, the telematics data from that vehicle. After months in forensic laboratories, results are coming back. And if that vehicle moved during the 3.5-hour window on September 27th, if it stopped somewhere on or near that property, investigators now have coordinates, they have a location, and they are standing on that land right now looking for what the data is telling them is there. This is no longer a missing persons search. This is a criminal investigation closing in on something specific. Gus's parents have not been silent through all of this. In a heartbreaking public statement released just weeks before this latest search, Jessica and Joshua Lamont asked for one thing: not justice, not answers, not an arrest. They asked for anyone with information to come forward. Those are the words of 2 people who have been cleared of all involvement. 2 parents watching an investigation slowly close around someone they know, someone who was part of their lives, someone their son saw every day, someone their son trusted. Imagine living inside that reality, waking up every morning knowing that the answer to where your child is may have existed from the very first night. That while you were searching, while volunteers were draining dams, while helicopters were flying over 95 square kilometers of outback, someone on that property knew and said nothing. Task Force Horizon is at Oak Park Station right now, for the third time, searching multiple locations, with forensic data that investigators have spent months analyzing. This case is not stalled. This case is not cold. This case is moving towards something. The question is no longer whether something happened at Oak Park Station on September 27th, 2025. The physical evidence, the evidentiary void, the eliminated theories, the seized devices, the identified suspect, all of it points to the same answer. The only remaining question is what investigators are about to find on that property today, and whether it will finally give Gus's family the truth they have been waiting 6 months to hear. If you know anything about what happened at Oak Park Station between 5 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. on September 27th, 2025, contact Crime Stoppers Australia at 1-800-333-000. Anonymous, confidential, no questions asked about who you are. Gus Lamont is 4 years old. He deserves to be found. His parents deserve the truth. And whoever made the decision that night to stay silent should understand something. Forensic data does not forget. Telematics do not lie. And Task Force Horizon does not give up. If this video showed you something you hadn't heard before, share it. The more people watching this case, the more pressure remains on everyone connected to it. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the moment anything changes in this investigation, you will know.